for being here today. We're very glad to have everybody here with us. Hi, welcome. So come on in. I'm Jean Camo, Executive Director of LOWLINC, and I know that we have many members here today, many volunteers, and some visitors. So if you are a member or volunteer of LOWLINC, could you raise your hand? All right. And if you're a visitor or guest, could you raise your hand? All right, well, welcome. We're so glad you're here. I am going to just share a few things with you before I introduce our wonderful speaker. Our presenter, as you know, is from Mary Washington Hospice, and she's going to share lots of great information with us today. I wanted to share briefly my personal experience with hospice and my family's experience, and then talk about, you know, how this ties into what we do at LOWLINC. So I have my father as I'm going to start with my story with my father. So my father was an amazing role model for moving through the stages of life. He was a veteran. He worked really hard as a computer programmer. Didn't feel like his health was in the best, so he took up hiking, and nevertheless still had some health challenges, and after that took up social dancing, which he thought he'd never do. But he was really happy because it's like, oh gosh, I can meet the ladies this way. And so he was, you know, really doing great. He was wonderful in that he decided that he needed to get his documents together. He has 3 daughters, and he sort of focused on each of our skills, and he asked each daughter to be responsible for one area: financial, medical, and the party. That was my middle sister. So he got his documents in order, and really, I think maybe he knew something was coming because he was shortly after that diagnosed with lung cancer. He received some treatment and thought that things were good, but still realized, you know, my 3-level townhouse might be a little bit much for me, as much as I thought I'd stay here forever with my beautiful hiking paths behind my house. And he transitioned to some housing that the county offered that was essentially a small apartment, very small 1-bedroom apartment. He decluttered, he downsized, thanks Dad, and moved into that place, and it was wonderful because he had friends and continued to sort of be the life of the party there. When he passed, he really helped all of us be able to do, you know, what he wanted. And then it was kind of, I think about this with him, you know, when babies are born, we have showers and we celebrate and we do all these things. But when it comes to end-of-life planning, you know, we feel like it should be different. And of course it is different, but there are some things that we can learn from that. So my father had a wonderful party while he was still able to connect with his friends and all, and he hung up his hiking boots and said, you know, I've hung up my dancing shoes and my hiking boots, literally and figuratively. So that was really great. But the most important thing that I want to share with you about that is he also found hospice for himself and brought that into his life. And that was such an incredible gift to him and to our family, because we had people to walk with us, with him, and they just helped with all the services, which you're going to hear about, so I'm not going to go into the details, but he took advantage of basically all the volunteers and all the services that the hospice group offered. And then there was my mom. My mom and stepdad, they were completely opposite. We got a box up in the closet, don't want to talk about it, let's hope everything goes well. Well, luckily they put enough into those original documents that allowed my sisters and I to actually go to an attorney and get some things changed. I wouldn't count on that. I would do my best to get your documents in good shape yourself. It was touch and go sometimes with us trying to get things done, but we were able to, so that we were able to do the things that needed to be done to provide for their care at the very end of their lives. But they also took advantage of the services of hospice. And in fact, Mary Washington Hospice was the organization that cared for them in their last years, really. I mean, we think of hospice, and you're going to hear more about this as, you know, a couple of weeks or something, but it's not true. I mean, they were with us for a couple of years, actually. And we're fortunate to have some volunteers here that I got to know, thanks, I didn't know they were going to be here today, but that I got to know thanks to working with my parents. So anyway, at LOWLINC, what we try to do is learn together and support one another as we go through this journey, because we have a lot of wisdom and experience that we've gained through our years, but we always have to keep learning, right? And this is a new area for us. So we always talk about having our plan B. Plan A is everything's gonna go wonderful, beautiful, no problems. That's my plan. But we always want to have a plan B, because we don't know, you know, some things that might crop up. And so the more information that we have about the different types of care, including, and I asked Anna to talk a little bit about palliative care, and her primary focus will be on hospice care, the more we're prepared and the better decisions we can make, because we've got that information. So thank you for coming here to learn, and also we hope that you'll take the information that you gather here today out into the community and share. We don't want, you know, it's hard to face some of the things and talk about some of the things, but I think once we do, we feel more empowered and we feel better. So again, I congratulate you on being here today to join together with all of us. All right, so with that said, I'm going to, when we're done, we do have surveys for you to fill out. We really appreciate you filling those out. And then also, before you leave, I wanted to share a little bit more about some upcoming LOWLINC things that you're all invited to. So I'll tell you more later. But first, I want to introduce Anna. Is it Anna or Anna? Anna, okay, Anna. So she was originally born and raised in Virginia. So Anna Lewis returned to the area when her mother was suddenly diagnosed with brain cancer. When she was moved by the direct impact that hospice and grief support had on her family, so she began working for Mary Washington Hospice and Grief Support Services in 2016. She currently oversees the complementary grief programming offered through the Grief Support Services, the Hospice Volunteer Program, and all the community outreach efforts. Anna's team works to make sure our community is educated and prepared for the end-of-life care. She believes knowledge is power, and that power can translate into improved quality of life for everyone. So thank you so much, and Anna, turn it over to you.
Thank you. I was waiting for you to step over the board ready to pull it out. So I'm going to be kind of tied to the laptop while I click through my slides, but I did want to thank you so much for having me today. I start all presentations just kind of explaining three really brief things. One is, I know I'm going to give you a lot of information. If some of it doesn't make sense, or if you have questions, please don't hold on to it till the end. Raise your hand, stop me, ask me. I definitely want this to be as conversational as possible. I love hearing about your experiences with hospice. So please do not feel like you're interrupting me. If you're like, wait a minute, Anna, can you go back? What is DME, or whatever I end up saying that you might not understand. The other two things is, I am not a nurse. So I do not have a clinical background. I did not go to nursing school. So when I'm doing these presentations, I'll get a lot of questions too that are specific about either somebody's own health, the health of their parents, and they'll say, my father has, dementia, and last week he was able to dress himself and button his jacket, and this week he's not. How much longer do you think we have until hospice? Do you think that we're giving him, what doctor do you might recommend for him to see? Or could you come out, he's right, over here, can you come and evaluate him? I can't do any of that stuff. I'm not a nurse. But if you have questions specific like that, I'll get into it. You can call our office and we can send a nurse out to evaluate somebody for hospice, typically within 24 hours. And the other thing I am not an expert in is insurance. So when I talk about what the hospice benefit is, it's for Medicare. And it's for Medicaid. Those plans both have a hospice benefit. If you have private insurance, as you all know, insurance in our country varies greatly, individual to individual, plan to plan. So I don't know if Blue Cross Blue Shield of Virginia, Aetna Plus, CPO, PPO, all of those things. I always tell people the best resource for questions about your insurance is calling your insurance and asking, Do I have a hospice benefit? What does that include? Does it include at-home hospice, inpatient hospice? Ask those questions, the earlier the better, especially if it's a plan you are gonna have for a while, just so you're aware. Again, Medicare and Medicaid both have hospice benefits, so when I say that these things are covered, I'm talking about Medicare and Medicaid. Private insurance is a little bit more different, is a little different.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Mary Washington is a hospice for, oh gosh, I lost the word. They make money.
No, it's nonprofit. So
It's
everything with,
nonprofit.
yeah, and the healthcare system itself is a not-for-profit.
Okay,
Mhm.
because it's a not-for-profit, not a non-profit.
What is the difference to you?
I worked for a not-for-profit company, and basically what it was explained to me as, we're not trying to make money, but if we do, it's okay. We're a non-profit, no, they really don't want to make money.
So it's nonprofit, so we have 501c3, or we're tax exempt. If you make a donation to Mary Washington, you can write it off with on your taxes.
Okay.
And then any of the revenue that the healthcare system at large makes goes back into the community. Which is different from like a MedStar, where they have shareholders and all that kind of stuff. We don't have that.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'm asking because I had experience with Hospice of the Rapidan
Oh,
before
okay.
they got folded into, well, Hospice of Piedmont.
Mm-hmm.
And they're definitely a nonprofit.
Yeah,
They want-
Hospice of Piedmont does wonderful stuff. They have they have a wonderful hospice down there. Yeah, and we're the only nonprofit hospice in the community.
That's important.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. Anybody else before I get started? Yes, ma'am.
Does Mary Washington do hospice in Lake of the Woods?
In Lake of the Woods, yeah, you're part of our service area. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, so this is just what I'm going to kind of go over today. I'm going to describe what hospice care entails, understanding the benefits of hospice. I'm going to go over the hospice referral process. So if you or someone you love is deemed hospice appropriate, what then? So I'll go through those steps. And then I am going to do an overview of our volunteer program, which is a huge piece of Mary Washington. Okay, so hospice is, sorry, my daughter's school is calling. Let me silence this. She goes to school off 17 and they just lost power up and down 17, so I'm sure it has to do with that. Hospice is the model for quality, compassionate care for people facing a serious or life-limiting illness or injury. So that is pretty much the textbook definition. Hospice has been in the United States. It's still relatively new if you kind of think about the history of medicine. It initially started over in Europe. It moved over here in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And it is, I always like to kind of put it in these 5 boxes. The first one is that it's team-oriented. So when you are receiving hospice services, you are receiving the support of an RN who comes and visits you in your home, whatever your home is to you. So if that's a skilled facility, if it's an assisted living facility, if it's a residential home, an apartment, we have a relationship with MICA where we have homeless patients who are in temporary housing. We visit them wherever it is that you call home. You have, like I said, an RN. You have a CNA to provide personal care, so that's baths, blow drying your hair, helping you brush your teeth, that kind of stuff. You have a social worker. They describe their role as pretty much addressing everything that's not medical. So a social worker will help if you haven't done funeral planning, if you haven't had your will or your estate planning done. They'll help you with that. They'll help with resources. If you're a vet who's never tapped into your veteran benefits, they can help look into what do you qualify for? Can you have caregivers come into the home to help support? So they walk you through that. We have a chaplain. My mom, like I mentioned in the intro, she was on hospice. She was a cradle Catholic. She wanted nothing to do with the chaplain through the hospice. She wanted to just talk to her priest, and that's okay. But the chaplain support is available if you want to take advantage of that. Then we also have volunteer services. Our volunteers do a multitude of things. I'm not going to get into it because it is the last couple slides. but they are available to support you and your caregiver. And then the two things that make Mary Washington Hospice unique to this community is we have a full-time massage therapist and a full-time music therapist on staff. So you, and I'll get into the benefits of each of those services, but that is not a standard hospice benefit. So if you move to Boston and you go, through a hospice there, they might not have those on staff. That is unique, a unique service that we provide, and we're not reimbursed for that through Medicare. So when you talk about the donations, those are things that money donated goes to cover the costs of those salaries, because it's not, we don't bill for it. The other thing is that it's patient driven. So what I love about hospice so much is that when you go to see a doctor, typically your doctor is treating your symptoms. They're trying to cure whatever ailment you have going on. Hospice, we're treating the individual. We are trying to make the individual as comfortable as possible. We aren't, it's where you have made the decision that you are no longer pursuing curative treatments, and your priority is quality of life, and that's what we focus on. And that goes into comfort care as well. One of the big things about hospice is, and you touched on this, is the benefits really do, they come out the longer you're on hospice. So we'll have people who are on hospice for 12 hours sometimes. We'll admit somebody and then they pass away that evening. They're not gonna get the full, there's just not enough time to have a social worker come out and help your family plan for your funeral, to have a volunteer come and keep you company. So the longer that we're involved, the better in terms of reaping the full benefits of hospice. I touched on, we provide assistance with end-of-life planning, and then we also provide a ton of caregiver support. So when my mom got sick, she was 65, and she passed out at the post office. She was the epitome of health. She was never weighed over 110 pounds, did yoga, ate vegan, I mean, the whole thing. And it was a couple days before Thanksgiving, and she passed out at the post office. I was living in Florida at the time with my husband, and she went to, they sent her via ambulance, obviously, to Mary Washington. And the next thing I know, we're getting a call that they're medevacing her to Georgetown because they did a scan and there's something on her brain. So my husband and I drove up from Florida, obviously, like, as fast as we could. And they, within like 5 days, they said, she has glioblastoma and she's got 6 months to live. And like literally a month before, she'd been in Beijing for 3 weeks traveling. So it was like, my family was like completely thrown into this world of doctor's appointments and oncologist appointments and going to the radiologist. And even though we knew that it was terminal, she's like, I want to try everything I can. And so she had this, oh my gosh, I'll never forget, discharging, and the list of medications that she was on, steroids to make sure she didn't have a seizure, just in these crazy quantities, and we had to make sure we coordinated it with food has to be given at this time, but then 30 minutes later you have to make sure that she drinks this much water. And I mean, and this was so brand new to all of us. We didn't have that slow transition of her slowly declining, where we're, okay, she has a doctor's appointment today, okay, she has another one tomorrow. No, all of it went from just going for her annual physical to we had doctor's appointments every single day, all over Fredericksburg, trying to manage this medication. And like I said, I was not a clinician. We didn't know what we were doing. When she finally realized that the treatment wasn't gonna work, she had everything, we had always known that she would want hospice. If her plan A didn't work out, and this was very much a plan B. And so when we got hospice involved, it changed everything for my dad, for me, and for my brothers. I get choked up every time I tell this, but I just remember the nurse who came to admit her, I was just like, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know if I'm taking care of her correctly, blah, blah, blah. And she was just like, nope, this is what we're gonna do. And she had a plan, and we had to do step 1, and then we had to do step 2, and then here we're gonna get this notebook, and I'm gonna write down a full day of medication, so you can just go consult this. I mean, even it said we had never thought to write it down. I mean, that's how out of it we were. And here are the supplies that you need, and here's how you change a wound dressing. And here, it was just the support that they gave my mom and the peace that my mom felt having a nurse come and check on her was incredible. but the support that they gave my dad and myself and my brothers, making us feel that not only were we, skating by, taking care of her, but that we were doing a good job, and that she was getting the care that she deserved, and that she wasn't going to have to spend the last couple of her months of her life in and out of a hospital, in and out of doctor's appointments, because that's not what she wanted. So I always say hospice is such a benefit to the individual, and of course, as a care team, that's our focus, but the benefits absolutely seep out into the family, into the caregivers, and providing them support as well. In addition to the caregiver support, hospice also does not end when a patient passes away. We provide 13 months of complimentary bereavement support to every individual who's identified as a caregiver. So if you have it's not like just your most immediate family. That bereavement support comes in the form of phone calls. We have support groups. We have things around the holidays. We have I just lost my train of thought. We have a memorial service every year. So that support follows the family for 13 months. And if you opt out of it, that's perfectly fine too, but it is available. Okay, the hospice benefits. So the three things that hospice covers, the insurance benefit, are medication, the clinical team, and then the medical supplies. So the supplies, I always get questions about supplies. What supplies do you guys cover? It's anything like chucks, wound care, barrier cream, pull-ups, the no foam shampoo, oral swabs, lotion, all of those things are completely covered under the hospice benefit. The DME, which is durable medical equipment, that's also covered and considered part of the medical supply. So that's the hospital bed that comes in. If you opt out, and we've had patients who are like, I love sleeping in my recliner, that's perfectly fine. But a lot of people want to have a hospital bed. And so we cover the cost of that. We arrange the delivery of that. All of that is something that we take care of. A bedside table, oxygen. A lot of our patients need oxygen. So we cover that, the tanks, the company comes, switches out the tanks, we coordinate all of that. Fall mats, fall alarms, nebulizer, commode, those are other things that are part of the medical supplies. And then of course, like I said, the clinical team is completely covered under the hospice benefit as well. So once you are deemed hospice appropriate, so you've decided that you are no longer pursuing aggressive treatment, you're not looking for curative treatment, and the outcome of your disease progression is within 6 months or less, the individual will pass away. And of course, none of us have a crystal ball. That does not mean for sure that if you get to that 6-month mark, okay, hospice just shows up one day and it doesn't come 6 months and 1 day from when you're admitted. It's just, I think Medicare had to pick a timeline, and so they said 6 months or less. So once you are, you've made those decisions, that those are your goals of care, you would ask for a hospice referral. The hospice referral can come from your primary care doctor, it can come from an oncologist, it can come from any doctor that you see that you trust. If you're in the hospital and you want to have a hospice consult, you can ask for it there. But we also go out and see patients, like I said, we see it a lot with Alzheimer's and dementia patients that might have a slower decline. You can call us and we can come evaluate for hospice without a referral from the doctor. So you can just call our main line, say, my mom or dad has X, give us a little bit of background information on what the disease progression is so we know what we're going to be looking for. And then we can say, okay, come do an assessment. You're not signing anything. The hospice benefit has not started. You don't have to worry about that. And we just assess whether or not, if you were to admit today, you would qualify. And that people find really helpful because it is something that if they know they want hospice, they aren't, and they're worried about waiting too long, they can just call and we can come in. Once we get the referral, the admission typically happens within 24 hours. The only caveat of that is if, for instance, your doctor sends the referral at like 4:30 on a Friday. Our office does close at 5 o'clock, and so while we have staff available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the referral coming at 4:30, our Trudy is her name, our admissions person, she leaves at 5 o'clock. And so getting the referral, obviously, we have to look through the referral, we have to make sure that they're in our service area. There's a lot of actual like people skills that she has to go through. And so that probably won't be seen until Monday. And that's the only time we're not able to admit within that 24 hours. Yes, sir.
Can an individual go directly to you rather than the doctor going to you to speed up the process?
For the referral?
Yes.
Yeah, so we do have something called a self-referral. I will say the only time that poses a complication is with VA benefits. The VA really wants a referral to come from a physician, and that's not anything that we kind of have anything to say about. They just, in order to kind of, I guess, flip that switch on, the VA needs a referral from a doctor, but it can be for Medicare, it can be a self-referral. Any other questions? And then the one thing is that we do sometimes, it's easier, quote unquote, to have a doctor's referral just because along with that referral comes a lot of the medical chart. So we'll be able to see for somebody who's had a slow disease prognosis or an oncologist who's able to say, you know, we've had the hospice discussion, so we know that they understand what the patient understands what hospice is. And that it aligns with their goals of care. So a nurse comes, they will complete the admission. Sometimes a social worker comes as well. It depends on the needs of the patient. They assess the individual, like I said, for hospice appropriateness. We are heavily regulated by Medicare, so it's not a situation where like, oh, my mom's 100. She's probably gonna pass away soon because she's 100, so can she be hospice eligible? No, there's plenty of 100-year-olds who are perfectly healthy and have no reason to be on hospice. If I ran Medicare, I think at a certain time we should all have a nurse come to our home and check on us there, and that we shouldn't be going to all these different doctors and stuff, but unfortunately, nobody asked me. So we do have to, you do have to qualify. Yes, ma'am.
If you're under hospice care, can you still go to your doctor?
Yes. You just, and like your primary care doctor. And there's doctors in the community who still want to be involved in their patient's care. Not all of them. And that is a little bit awkward for us sometimes. We'll admit a patient, they're like, my doctor, I've been going to him or her for 40 years. I know they're gonna wanna be involved. I know that they're gonna come and see me even though I'm not gonna come to the office. And then when we reach out, we're like, oh, so-and-so is admitted to hospice. They're like, okay, you don't really have to keep us updated. So there are times where, because the doctor maybe they don't do house visits and the individual thought they'll make an exception for me. And so you can absolutely still see your doctor. You just are foregoing curative treatment. So you can't go get chemo, for example, from your oncologist. That would not be, you could technically, but it's going to come out of your own pocket because Medicare's not going to cover hospice and pay for the chemo. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But the doctor's office would still be covered.
Yeah, and it depends too. Like I said, if the doctor sees, you're on hospice, I'm not guaranteeing that the doctor's going to make an appointment for you. That would be on the doctor's discretion. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you fell and like broke a leg or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's something you'd usually have to go to the hospital
Yeah.
for a doctor, and you're on hospice. Then what happens?
So you would still, we have patients who fall and they go to the hospital, they get evaluated, and depending on what happens, there are some people who opt not to have a surgery. They say, I don't want to go, I don't want to have a surgery, just discharge me. Thank you for the information. And then they go home still on hospice. If they opt to have that surgery, for example, if they've hurt their hip and they need, or their knee, you would discharge from hospice, and then readmit whenever you were discharged from the hospital for, obviously it depends on the surgery and how intense it is. It could be, days, weeks, whatever, but then we would readmit. And usually depending on how long you're gonna be in the hospital for like a fall or for that things, we leave the equipment in the home. If it's gonna be, I'm having surgery, I fell, I'm also gonna need PT afterwards. So we're looking at like 6 weeks, we would come and pick up the equipment, the oxygen, the bed, all of that stuff, and then readmit when the 6 weeks was up or whenever you were ready.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
And then just to follow on to that, so, I mean, I think the question's around that, the idea of, you know, you're not getting curative treatment for your hospice diagnosis. So whatever your hospice diagnosis is, you're not gonna get curative treatment. But if you have a completely different condition that you need medical treatment for to stay comfortable and you know, that kind of thing, you could still get that.
Yep.
Right.
And the thing is too with hospice is that it's not necessarily a golden ticket that you cash in and then once you've used it, you can never re-enroll in hospice again. Like I said, you can discharge for pursuing aggressive treatment. You can have a change of heart. You can say, you know what, I have breast cancer and I really, you know, was just exhausted from the chemo and I didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to pursue treatment anymore. And now I've had 4 weeks at home and I've had time to think about it and I want to go back and get more chemo or more radiation or try this, you know, new trial that's down at Duke or whatever it is. You can discharge from hospice and in 6 months you realize that maybe those things didn't work or maybe you've changed your mind and you're ready for hospice at that point. You can be readmitted. It's not a situation where it's like, oh, well, you already had hospice 6 months ago, so sorry you changed your mind. Not at all. We discharge people to pursue aggressive treatment and then follow up. And we also discharge people for stabilizing. Like I said, we have those strict Medicare guidelines, and if you no longer meet them, even if you're on hospice, you get discharged. And it can sometimes be a welcome discharge where patients and families are like, oh my gosh, thank goodness we're not, you know, they're not on hospice anymore. And there's sometimes where families are like, no, we really like having that nurse come in, like we don't want to be discharged, and we unfortunately have to abide by the Medicare guidelines. So we do see people who have just been declining, and then when they're home, they have a nurse coming into their home to see them. They have support through, you know, a social worker who might have been able to find, you know, that they qualify for a caregiver benefit, so their wife isn't as stressed out having to provide 24/7 care, and things just start improving, and then they start gaining weight, or they start, you know, whatever it is that they see improvement. That happens. I mean, it's definitely, I think, you know, nobody knows exactly when somebody's going to pass away. So just because it's, you know, like I said, your disease progression, the best guess is that you have 6 months left or not. There's plenty of people who defy that every day. And we discharged 3 people this week. So we are available 24/7. Our RN is available round the clock. You call us. I was one of those hospice family members who I would be like, my mom's eye is twitching a little bit and I'd like somebody to come out and see her, and I know it's 11 o'clock at night, and they would come and see us. We don't have CNAs around the clock. They are a Monday to Friday support, but we do have a counselor on call 7 days a week, 8:30 to 5, and then our massage and music therapy are also unfortunately not available around the clock, and that's pretty much just because we only have one of each of them and they need some time off. But our nurse, like I said, is available 24/7. You call if you need a visit. They come out and see you day, night, snow, Christmas, New Year's, doesn't matter. And then I went over the medical equipment. So I've touched on this, that hospice is not only for the last hours or days of someone's life. I think we all remember Jimmy Carter, who recently passed away, and he was on hospice for well over a year and a half. My grandmother was from New Mexico, flew here to Fredericksburg for Christmas one year. She had a medical emergency, went into surgery, and then all of a sudden, the doctor, I'll never forget, was like, she has 15 minutes to live. And we were like, well, first of all, 15 minutes, like, how do you know that? And second of all, like, oh my gosh. And she made it through the night and then was able to come home, discharged to my parents' home, where she lived for 2 years on hospice, on Mary Washington's hospice. They eventually discharged her from hospice. She flew back to New Mexico and then died 12 years later. So there, wow, God bless her. I mean, I remember, this is not funny, but this is my sense of humor, that I remember when my mom passed away a couple weeks later, like, because my grandmother was still alive, and I was like, I cannot believe that Nana's still alive, and my mom isn't. Like, what? Because she just had 9 lives, and sure enough, she died a couple years after that. So when I say we don't know, we really don't know, and that's why getting hospice involved, you know, sooner rather than later. I know that if we would have left my grandmother in the hospital, she probably would have died. She probably would have died in the hospital because she was exhausted, because she was away from home, because she was somebody who, her love language was close physical touch, so we weren't really able to cuddle her, we weren't really able to hold her and wash her hair and do all that in the hospital. I know that she lived all that those years later because she was able to discharge, she got hospice, and like I said, she died 10 plus years later. It can be used for months, as long as you're medical eligible. And again, I already went through, if you change your mind, we can discharge. Looking into the hospice benefits sooner than later, I already said this, but please, you know, if Medicare is not your only insurance or Medicaid is not your only insurance, please, you know, call your insurance company, ask about your hospice benefit. What does it include? What doesn't it include? And just knowing that, I think, is so important. And then making sure it's an ongoing conversation you have with your primary care doctor. Letting them know, you know, I want hospice eventually. Can you, if you have something that disease-specific questions, what is the normal disease progression for this? When would you refer to hospice? I think those are all really important questions and help keep our doctors accountable. Because there are doctors who might not think that hospice is appropriate for them to recommend to you, and making sure that they know you're open to it starts that conversation.
Can I just make one comment?
Yeah.
Based on my experience, and again, I'm just speaking as an individual and not, I don't know all the rules and regulations that doctors operate under, but it was my experience that doctors, I get the impression they are not supposed to bring it up to us, so it's up to us to ask. Or maybe the doctors don't feel comfortable, and also I just encourage, if you're in a hospital or you're in a situation, to not be shy. Don't think, oh, the doctor will recommend it if they think I need it, because that may not be true. Since we're talking about doctors, I thought I'd mention that.
No, I think you have to be, and I say this as an employee of a healthcare system, you have to be your own advocate. And if it's something that you, like I said, just asking them, when would you recommend hospice? Even ask your primary care doctor about that if you have a parent who is declining, and ask for his advice, his or her advice, excuse me. My mom or dad lives in Maryland, and I've been seeing these changes, and get their opinion on it, because your parent's primary doctor might not be somebody who's having that conversation with them as either. Okay, so palliative care and hospice and palliative, what are the differences? I'm going to put this down, I hope it doesn't make an echo noise. No. And hand these out. This is a sheet that describes the difference between hospice and palliative. I brought enough for everybody. So please, it goes into a lot of detail. I'm going to give like a very high level detail, but hospice and palliative are 2 different departments at the hospital. We are not the same department. So in terms of like their staffing, what their turnaround time is, all that stuff, I just don't know it because I don't work for them. I think she's got yours right there. And then,
Here, I have it.
Oh,
Yeah. Thank you.
so we do have, does everybody have one? Okay, good. So we do have palliative at the hospital, like I said. They are a different...
I have a question.
Oh, okay. Did you want to ask it now?
When it's convenient.
Now, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I started hearing about hospice, many years ago. And when I first started hearing that term hospice, they said, well, he's going into hospice. So in my mind, I think he's going in, he's not doing it at home, but he's going to And I thought it would be like a residential environment. But then more lately, I've heard, well, he's got hospice at home. And so I'm just wondering, like, can you give me like a breakdown, a percentage? The other thing, while I'm on that subject, I mean, if you're in assisted living, I don't know, like Jubilation, or there's probably other, assisted living places, would you get hospice there, or do they have hospice? Could you just kind of,
Yeah.
respond to, that's,
Sure. So, yes, to the second question about when.
there are about 3 questions.
Yeah, it's okay. So, all right. So the first question, when you hear people are going into hospice. So yes, there are communities that have what's called a hospice house. And that is think of like sometimes they're just giant homes, like a home on Washington Avenue, downtown Fredericksburg, like those big houses. It could look like that. Sometimes they are just like mini hospitals, like kind of a freestanding emergency room. They can look like that, like the freestanding ED that Mary Washington just opened up off Route 3. Like they can look like a mini hospital. We in our area do not have a hospice house. I think that we absolutely need one, and it is something that I am constantly advocating for, but we don't have one in the community. And what the hospice house is, usually the Hospice of the Piedmont, she mentioned, they have a beautiful facility. It's usually, 10 to 15 beds, I'd say. It's not enormous. It's not, a 100-bed facility or anything like that. The patient lives there. The patient could live there because their caregiver maybe is having burnout and needs a break, and so they might go to the hospice house for that break for 5 days a week. Right now, when that happens with our patients at Mary Washington Hospice, the patient goes to the hospital for those 5-7 days. We also have people who, life goes on, and so sometimes caregivers have weddings or college graduations that they have to go out of town for. So what happens to the patient that they are caring for? Obviously, it's not safe to leave them for 24 hours a day without caregivers. So you can go into the hospital, have a bed there for, like I said, 5 days. Whereas with the hospice house, it's a much more comfortable setting. And then we also have patients who, when they discharge from the hospital, they might not have a discharge plan. So a hospice house would be incredible because you're not discharging anyone who doesn't have a home to go to but could benefit from hospice. So when people say they're going into hospice, yes, there are places that are just hospice facilities, so to say, but they're commonly referred to as a hospice house. The other question, and I think I've already forgotten the third, so please ask me, but the other question about assisted living.
Yeah.
So yes, we go into assisted living facilities. Assisted living facilities in our area, I don't want to speak globally or for the entire United States of America, but in our community, they don't have their own hospice. They can provide comfort care, but they're not going to have the whole RN visits. They're not going to be extra visits that your loved one's already receiving from the staff at, a Carriage Hill or out Bowling Green or wherever that person's residing. We go into those facilities. A team is assigned that facility, so it's the same RN, social worker. They know the facility staff, and they know the ins and outs of how the facility works. So you can receive hospice. I think our patients are pretty evenly split, home patients and facility patients, in terms of where they're receiving the services. And then what was the third question?
Nope, that's pretty.
That was it, okay. Yes.
Some senior living places don't have, if you have hospice, you have to leave.
Oh, I'm not.
I ran into that when I was asking around,
Mhm.
some of the senior places, like behind the chicken place.
Behind the chicken place.
No, I am familiar with the place, basically.
Oh.
Yes, there, and they said, no, you have to move out.
So we do have patients at Chancellor's Village Assisted Living. There are 55 plus communities. I don't know because they're almost like HOAs, they're just independent living, but they're not. Chancellor's Village 55 plus is a community that people live in, but they're not necessarily receiving medical care from the staff, right? But then there's Chancellor's Village Assisted Living where they are.
Oh, they didn't tell me that, they just.
Yeah,
said-
if you're because we have a contract with,
They said that you'd have to move out if you went into hospice.
maybe the 55 plus, but we definitely have patients and a contract with Chancellor's Village, the assisted living.
Oh, okay.
And then like, for
I didn't
instance,
know there was two parts to it.
Mhm. And then for instance, like Jubilation, we've had patients at Jubilation as well. I'm trying to think of all, like Celebrate Virginia, that's another 55 plus, we have had patients there. So I'm not aware of them, but that's not to say that, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't allow hospice, but if you're a skilled or assisted licensed facility, yeah, hospice comes in.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions before I go into hospice and palliative? So palliative is a little bit more new, I guess, in the United States than hospice is. Hospice has been around for a while. I always just use the kind of example of, think of palliative as almost like air traffic controllers. So if you're somebody who goes to a bunch of different doctors, you're on a bunch of different medication, and you're having a hard time managing all of that, palliative would come in and kind of coordinate that care for you. So you are still pursuing curative treatment. Your disease progression does not have a 6 months or less prognosis. You are able to get palliative at any stage of the disease, so it's not just at the end like hospice is. Their goal, though similar to hospice, is to ease side effects. So, I'm sorry, not similar to hospice, is to ease side effects related to medication or whatever treatment or whatever it is. So they both do provide emotional support. They have a social worker as well on the team. It is a team-based approach. So for palliative care, you have a doctor, a nurse, or an NP, social worker. Like I said, they don't offer spiritual support, and they don't have massage or music therapy.
Could I just weigh in
Yeah.
on that one more time? Sorry, I'm not
It's
trying
okay.
to interrupt you, but again, I'm just sharing my personal experience. So we heard about this awesome thing called palliative care, and I just called every agency I could and found out, that but pre-COVID, you could get palliative care just like home hospice care. But after COVID, because of the workforce challenges, they no longer offered palliative care in the community, although hospice care continued. Now that may change, I don't know if it's changing now or not. But what I did find was that the palliative care team in the hospital, Mary Washington Hospital, is awesome. I didn't know about it. Trudy's name, you've heard the name Trudy earlier. Trudy's like the go-between between everything. But that palliative care really was so supportive, and then is a good bridge between, hospice is it time or not, and also I really appreciate you talking about palliative care, because I think it's something we haven't heard about as much, and it's really can be helpful.
My daughter needs palliative care and they no longer come out to.
Right. That is a frustration and challenge.
It
I
is.
wish that it was available. Yeah.
They don't come out to Lake of the Woods, is that what you?
They don't go out.
It's not available in
functioning
the.
No, palliative has a clinic that patients come to, almost like a
Okay.
doctor's office that you would go see. It's in front of the hospital. I don't know the address off the top of my head. I'm more than happy to follow up if anybody needs it afterwards, or a contact there. But before, like you were saying, before COVID, it functioned like a home health or a hospice, where those visits would be done in your home, out in the community, or we would have our palliative doctor go to Carriage Hill or Hughes Home and see patients in the facilities. That's not how they're staffed now.
Hopefully that'll change someday. But
Yeah.
you have another question?
My question is, how do you know which, but I guess you have to talk about palliative care first before I ask that question.
What do you mean, how do
know
you?
which one you need?
So the very high level is, if you want to continue to pursue curative treatment, palliative is the choice that you want to make. If your disease prognosis is not 6 months or less, it would be palliative. And those are the big qualifiers between the two.
So if your doctor tells you that you should go on hospice, then you call hospice and not palliative.
Yeah, they're two totally different departments. Think about it like Like, you wouldn't call hospice if you needed a physical therapist to come because you had hurt yourself and you needed somebody to come, do your PT with you in your home. You wouldn't call hospice for that. So you wouldn't call hospice if you needed palliative care. You would call palliative. Does that make sense? Okay.
And you're only under one service at a time.
In terms of hospice and palliative?
Yeah.
Yeah, typically, yeah. You transition from palliative to hospice typically. And some people, that might not be, it's not a direct transition, people, because you can have palliative at any stage of the disease, like I mentioned. It's not just at the end. And then the big difference too is insurance, unfortunately. Wah, wah. I know. You don't want me to get started on how I feel with that. But palliative is covered by most insurances, but please, please, please call and talk, especially if you have private insurance. What is that benefit? It is covered by Medicare, I know, but I don't even know, that VA benefits for it. It just varies so much, and it is something that's relatively new. So, and by relatively, I mean like 20 years, but it takes people a long time to catch up. So, I don't even know if all insurance policies even have a benefit at all. So please call your insurance.
One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
What about living alone, being on hospice? Do they decide when you can or can't?
What do you mean they decide? Who decides what?
Hospice?
Mm-hmm. Can you live alone and receive hospice? Is that what you're asking? So, yes and no. It depends on when hospice is coming. If you are still able to take care of yourself independently, yes. But if you are bedridden or there's safety concerns, if there was a fire and you aren't able to get out, if you can't feed yourself, we do a whole assessment, the social worker does, to see if it's a safe home.
So it would be as you gradually get worse, then they would make
Exactly. And we've got caregiver support available, but like I said, it's not 24 hours. So typically what families do is they reach out to like Visiting Angels or those companies to provide caregivers. But like our nursing visits are not, 8-hour visits, for example. Sometimes people come into hospice and think that, they're gonna be there all day with them. They're not going to be. So you do need caregivers. But like I said, we have people who start on hospice and they're walking around and they're able to make their own food and they're able to, go to the bathroom and they're able, if there's a fall, they'd be able to get up. All of those things are fine, then they can continue. But to your point, as the individual would decline, that's a constant assessment that our social work team is doing. Yes, sir.
Is there any delay in getting hospice?
A delay like?
If I call and say, would like to get into hospice,
Mhm.
and you take people right away, if you're under Mary Washington, most of my experience has been recently that, you're lucky to get an appointment within 3 or 4 weeks. But I would think this is something you need right away.
It is different. So the biggest difference is if you call us without a doctor's referral, we have to visit you first to make sure you're hospice appropriate. We just can't send a nurse out to admit you because you say, I want hospice, unfortunately. So that, when you say immediately, we would have to do that visit first to assess you for hospice appropriateness first. Now, if a doctor has sent us a referral, that means he's already done that. He or she's already said this person is hospice appropriate. And then we still come out and assess, and sometimes, very rarely will we say, no, just because they've fallen 6 times, for example, that's not a qualifying hospice diagnosis. But we typically will admit people. Our goal is to admit them within 24 hours of receiving that referral. Yeah. And we usually have 3 admission nurses Monday to Friday, and then 2 admission slots on the weekend. So on the weekends it is tighter, but our goal is to get people on hospice. And of course it changes too. Sometimes people will call us and say, I have a referral, I know I'm hospice appropriate, but my daughter's coming up from Florida on Friday and I want her here for the admission. Can I be admitted on Friday? And of course, that's when we'll schedule it. We won't say, well, no, we've got to come within 24 hours. That's not a Medicare. We won't get in trouble for doing that. So we obviously work with the individual schedule too. Okay, I'm gonna zoom through these slides because I feel like I am in a chatty Cathy. So massage therapy, I just put the benefits. A lot of people don't know the benefits of massage therapy and music therapy. Our massage therapist has been with Mary Washington Hospice for a very long time, well over a decade. He is incredible. The things that he can do to provide comfort, constipation relief, help with tight muscles. It's unbelievable until you actually see it. Decrease anxiety, increases quality of life. It helps with pain, decrease pain severity. He's incredible, and like I said, that is available to, that's a hospice benefit that's unique to Mary Washington, and as well with music therapy. Sherilyn is our music therapist. She's board certified. Sometimes people think, oh, they're just gonna come in and play a CD, or I'm showing my age, I don't even know, get Spotify up. And play music. No, she is a singer. She's an incredible singer. She plays guitar. The thing, you know, that I think is so special about music therapy is that it really does, she'll get to know the patient, know what their favorite music is. Even if the patient can't verbalize it, the family can. Will play favorite songs, and patients will be, who were maybe not alert or oriented before the music started playing, will become alert and oriented, because there's just something that music does to our brain that is special and unique. And then our volunteers. So we have about, we're so close to crossing 60 volunteers with Mary Washington Hospice. We were up to like, oh my gosh, almost 100 pre-COVID. And then during COVID 2020, we went down to like 25 volunteers, which was totally understandable. I mean, facilities weren't letting us in. It was only, you know, it was only the RN that could go in and physically see patients, and that went on for so long that a lot of our volunteers moved on to other things. But we are always accepting volunteers. If you know of anyone who's been touched by hospice or who's looking to give back, please let us know. You receive an incredible amount of training. I think it's a total of 16 hours. We have patient care opportunities. I don't think that you're gonna be like administering medication and, you know, transferring people out of their beds. So it's not that at all. We also have people who come in and help us with our bereavement calls. We have pet therapy, and you know Faye, she's one of our pet therapy volunteers. We have vigil volunteers. This group of people, I always say if I leave hospice, I'm gonna come back as a vigil volunteer. We have people, a lot of people unfortunately, who everyone in their family has passed away, and so they are all by themselves. Their adult children don't live close by, they might not have adult children, they don't, you know, whatever the situation may be, we don't know. But they are actively dying, and we don't want anyone to pass away alone. And so we have a group of volunteers who we call vigil volunteers, and they will come and sit with patients who are actively dying. The vast majority of these patients are in assisted or skilled facilities. Very rarely do we get a vigil request for a home patient, because the chances are they're living with somebody or they have round-the-clock caregivers. But it's incredible that it's just, I've sat in on a few vigils, and it is something that sounds like, my husband's always like, I could never do it, but it is such a peaceful and incredible experience. And we have people who go and just knit, we have people who go and play music, we have people who go and read their book next to them, we have people who, you know, we know that they were very faithful during their life, so we'll have, you know, tell the vigil volunteer, you know, if you know of any gospel songs, play those. It's really, really special work. Then administrative tasks, community outreach, and then we have a bunch of veteran opportunities as well. If you're a veteran and are interested in supporting other veterans, we have unique volunteer experiences for that.
What is a tuck-in call?
Oh, I skipped that. So a tuck-in call is, we have volunteers come in and they call all of our patients between Wednesday and Thursday and make sure that they have everything they need for the weekend. So, do you have enough chucks? Do you need us to order oxygen? We especially do this during the colder months with snow, because DME is typically available around the clock, but, excuse me, like with the snow that we've had this winter, I mean, there's been times where they're just like, we can't, you know, we're only doing emergency oxygen orders now. So we'll call and make sure people have everything they have. Check your medication, because a lot of pharmacies have wonky hours on the weekends. So even if we're available, the pharmacy might not be available to fill that medication for you. So we call them tucking them in for the weekend. These just a list of what volunteers can and cannot do. The big things are they can't dispense medication, they don't stay overnight, they do not take place of the primary caregiver. So like you said, with people who might live alone, our volunteers typically work in 4-hour shifts. They're not gonna be available to be there for 24 hours, for example. And they don't toilet or change patient briefs. And then here's our veteran volunteer program. Every Veterans Day, we do a huge pinning. We pin all the veterans in our community at every skilled and assisted living facility, whether they are on hospice or not. It's a huge, huge undertaking. We absolutely love to do it. We rely on volunteers from Quantico, from Blue Star Moms, from all different organizations throughout the community to help us do that. It's incredibly impactful. And then if you are interested in volunteering, that is Kathy's contact information. She's our volunteer coordinator. I have an error here. We don't require the COVID vaccine. Flu is required, but the COVID vaccine is not. And those are just other things that we would need of you if you are interested in volunteering. And that is the end of my slides. Does anyone have any other questions?
Where did you say the clinic is for palliative care in front of Mary Washington?
Yeah, it's in one of the office buildings. It's in front of like the giant hill. I don't know the exact address. It's like behind that CVS. You know how the CVS and then there's doctor offices right behind it. It's one of those clinics, but I don't know the suite. If you give me your contact information, I can find the exact suite number for you.
Okay.
Yeah. And then my last plug, I don't have any slides, but this is very new. We have started a program called Grief Support Services. And so this was pre-COVID again. Once COVID hit, all of these services unfortunately had to stop because they were all in-person support groups for people who have lost a loved one. This is open to anyone who has lost a loved one at any point in your life. You don't have to have any affiliation with Mary Washington. Your loved one doesn't have to have an affiliation with Mary Washington. The groups are completely free. Right now we have loss of a spouse, loss of a parent. We're running school groups in schools for kids who have experienced loss. We have 2 camps that are for teens and children who have experienced loss as well. We have quarterly workshops, and those topics vary. Sometimes it's for people who are grieving, and sometimes it's for people who want to support those who are grieving. So please, if grief is something that has touched you, or if it's something that is touching people and how do I support them, what can I do, we have topics and information and all of that for you. So we have one upcoming. It's an art workshop for kids who've lost a grandparent. It's at Stafford Hospital. I'm happy to send you information on that. But again, everything through Grief Support Services is completely free, and we don't even ask for an insurance card. There's no exchange of any of that. So everybody qualifies.
Wonderful.
All right, thank you. Oh, yes.
Oh, not done yet.
Go ahead.
Does hospice coordinate antibiotics, sprays that someone would take with COPD? Or is that still handled through Medicare?
The nurse.
Yeah, so we take over ordering all medication. I don't know about sprays specific to COPD, but like for example, if you develop a UTI while you're on hospice and you need an antibiotic, our nurse would order that antibiotic for you, and
Then she'll contact the hospice doctor and he'll follow.
Say that
I've been through hospice 3 times for family members
Okay.
I've taken care of. I
So-
just didn't know all the years.
Yeah, so I mean, eventually, we have a medical director, obviously, but hospice is and our medical director will tell you this, it is a nurse-driven health service. Our nurses are, yes, they're gonna send a script to the doctor to sign for the antibiotic, but they're the one coming to the home to evaluate if you have a UTI. You don't have to wait for our doctor to be available, for her name's Dr. Huffman, for her to come and see you to verify what the nurse has already verified. So yes, the doctor would technically sign the prescription, but you might not ever see Dr. Huffman for that. And does that make sense? And yeah, we would order it, and then through, if you're in assisted living, then it would be dispensed that way. If you're in a private home, it would go to CVS just like any other antibiotic that you would pick up. Did you have a question? No. All right. Thank you guys so much. I feel like I talked a lot. I'm sorry if it was too much information. And also, if you're really interested, I also have a presentation on advanced care planning that I'm happy to come back and do. So just let me know. You're so welcome.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was really great. And, like I said, my parents benefited from hospice, 2 different hospice agencies. And for my dad, it was more about the sort of the chaplain, social worker, and preparing sort of for end of life. And whereas my parents here at the lake, mom and stepdad, took advantage of everything. And it was so wonderful because we had the pet therapy, we had people visiting at the facility when my stepdad had to go to assisted living for a little while, actually nursing care for a little while. Let's see, the music therapy was incredible, so it just really helped, especially as a family member, to see that support. It wasn't just all about, 3 o'clock, time for the next medication? Like, we're still living life, right? And so that's what's so beautiful about hospice, so thank you so much.
Thank you for the time.
I'm again so glad that you all came, and if you have information that we can send out to people, like the palliative care,
The flyer.
yeah, and how to contact you directly and all that, we'll send it out. I did want to share a little bit for those of you who are guests and visiting, in case you don't know what LOWLINC does. We do a lot. So our goal is to help people be able to remain in their home safely and independently for as long as possible. And so our volunteers are available to provide such a wide range of support. So if it's time to not drive, or maybe you don't drive at night, or maybe drive so far, our volunteers can help get people to medical appointments and hairdresser appointments at the bank, anything that you might need a ride for. We also do light home maintenance, so please don't get that ladder out and change that light bulb. Call our volunteer. We have many social activities. We have lots of health and wellness program activities, including this. I want to thank the health and wellness team because they're the ones that hosted this today. So Margaret's on the camera, substituting for our usual tech guy or gal. And so thank you to them for doing that. We have a lot of committees that help LOWLINC go, and we couldn't do it without them. But we for those of you who have seen the minibus running around the lake, a 14-passenger minibus, we use that for 3 different things. One is lots of fun social activities, so we have a great time, and it does have a lift, so if anybody uses a wheelchair, they can still join us. We also use it for medical appointments, for again using the lift, and then we also open it up to the broader community beyond LOWLINC for civic engagement activities like going to the polls or public meeting at the airport, things like that. So I could just go on and on about the things that LOWLINC offers. So if you're interested in membership, we have some forms back there. We also have forms in case you're interested in volunteering. And again, we'll provide lots of information and answer your questions if you'd like to learn more. I would also just like to share some of the things that we have coming up. Many of them, again, are open to the community. So let's see. We're starting our music, memory, and movement. I haven't learned how to say it yet, the 3 M's program, and that's, I believe, March 13th, right? 12th, okay, March 12th, here at 2 o'clock, okay. And so it's open to, we'll have activities that you can do standing or sitting, either one. This time we're focusing on music, so we're going to do a sing-along with some folk songs, and in fact, our health and wellness team chair and her husband, who plays the guitar, are going to be helping us lead that sing-along. And then we're also going to do some memory activities. We have 2 different things. One is is it called Connections? That's in the New York Times, so that'll be a fun activity that people will do together. And then there's also a program that helps support memory, and we're going to do that, and it involves some very simple math. I'm talking like 3 + 3, and a little bit of writing, and again, very just small amount, and a little bit of reading out loud. And the program is really popular because it really helps support brain health and memory. So we hope that you all will come and check out this new program. And oh yeah, we're going to do a little movement in that as well too, right? Okay. And then for those of you on the music line, we want to continue to do some informal sing-alongs, so stay tuned for those. Those are always a lot of fun. But we're also really, really excited to be partnering with another nonprofit called Encore Creativity. And they are a group that is actually nationwide, and you can do a little or a lot with them. So we're going to be starting a 6-week pilot program here, and it's going to be held at Lake of the Woods Church. And there's a professional conductor who helps everybody learn how to read the music for singing, and we'll do a 6-week program of singing together. Now they offer 2 programs. One is Encore Rocks, and so that's rock music from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, yay. And then the other one is chorale. I think they call it chorale, but basically it's anything from show tunes to all different types of music. So during the 6 weeks we'll get to sample that. So if you're interested, please go to our website. You can, if you go to our website and scroll down just a little bit, you'll see our calendar, and you can click on it. And again, some of these things that are open to the community, anybody can register for. Some things are for members only. So anyway, for members and volunteers, I should say. What else do we want to talk about that's coming up soon? Well, our next speaker series is next month, first Thursday of the month, and who's our presenter?
Brian Devlin
Brian Devlin with
from Powell's Wellness.
Oh, Powell Wellness, right? And that's going to be about movement.
That's going to be about balance.
Balance,
Yeah.
okay. And so I don't know how many of you came to our fall prevention presentation in January, but that was very powerful and a good reminder that to do what we all want to do, which is stay as independent and healthy as possible, fall prevention is really important. And so this balance presentation should be really great. And I know Emily has been a great, I'm putting her on the spot, but Emily's also a member of the health and wellness team, but she is a big proponent of balance activities to help keep going.
This is her guy.
Keep strong. Huh?
This is her guy.
Oh, it's her guy. Yeah. Okay.
It's Shane Devlin. He works
Shane,
at
I'm sorry.
Devlin,
the
okay.
University of Virginia, physical therapy. He's a physical therapist, and he is excellent.
Okay.
And you will enjoy him. He's a young fellow and just very good.
Yeah. So we hope that you'll feel free always to come back once a month to these presentations. And also, if you have a topic that you're really interested in, let us know, because we know there's so many incredible resources in our community, and we want to be able to share that with everybody. So again, we just thank you all for coming.